Welcome to our second 2026 Faith and Science Forum. Her presentation today is entitled Oppenheimer and the Science of Hinduism. So let's welcome Victoria.
Okay, so Bob, does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
Retired. Wahoo. Okay. All right, so my talk will consist of 4 brief sections. The briefest of introductions to just what we need to know about Hinduism tonight. A brief section using a Hindu text to demonstrate that ethics is not religion. Another brief section, the 3rd section, that faith is not religion. And the 4th section, examples of religion and science. Okay? So 4 brief sections. So, tonight we are in the subcontinent of India, the Indus River Valley. Judaism, Christianity, Islam, all developed in close proximity to one another in the Middle East. Likewise, India is the other global hotspot for religions. Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Sikhism, all originated in various areas of what we term India, primarily in the northern areas. Buddhism close to present-day Nepal, up there in the northwest, and Sikhism also in the northwest. Okay? Hinduism itself is a umbrella term for a bundle of religious traditions which share many core concepts while retaining some individual characteristics that reflect the incredible cultural, linguistic, and ethnic complexities of India. India is a hugely complicated place, okay? Hinduism, the term, is a 19th century Common Era British term for the population of the Indus River Valley. Hinduism has no founder. There's no named founder. There's no person, okay? But it has a long textual history with a very elastic and expansive understanding of what constitutes sacred scripture. Okay. The earliest texts are the Vedic material, okay, with special reference to the Rig Veda. All branches of Hinduism, and there are many, but all branches of Hinduism accept Vedic material as authoritative. And these Vedic material, you see one up there, it almost looks like music if you look at it without your glasses on. It looks like, complicated Bach partita or something with all the notes on there. These Vedic texts contain poems, they contain hymns, praise for and to the forces of nature that were considered deities. And this is the belief system termed animism, and it's our earliest variant of religion, and it's what Nels is going to talk about next week. Material in these texts circulated orally for centuries until they began to be compiled in written form in Sanskrit, which is a sacred language beginning about the 13th century BCE. Here's your Sanskrit grammar, okay? I dare you. Okay. So let's take a look at the creation story in the Rig Veda. Then neither being nor non-being was, nor atmosphere, nor firmament, nor what is beyond. So what did it encompass? Where? In whose protection? What was the water, the deep, the unfathomable? Neither death nor immortality was there then. That one breathed, windless, by its own energy. Nothing else then existed, no sign of night or day. In the beginning, was darkness, swathed in darkness. All this was but unmanifested water. Whatever was, that one, coming into being, hidden by the void, was generated by the power of heat. Beneath was energy, above was impulse. Does that sound familiar to anything? Yanni Yanni, in the beginning, right? Watery primal void. That's the Ur story, echoing from ancient Babylonia and the Epic of Gilgamesh into India and eventually filtering into the ancient Near East. Okay? So that's our earliest level, the Vedic material. Then we have the Upanishads. This is a later category of texts. It means in Sanskrit esoteric teachings, and this is just selections by no means. Nothing is ever short in Hinduism, okay? This type of esoteric teaching, there are at least 108 formally recognized Upanishad texts. They deal primarily with metaphysical and theological concepts. One of their teachings is to show how Atman, A-T-M-A-N, the Atman, the self, is identical to the ground of reality, the absolute, which in Hinduism is termed Brahman. So the self is actually Brahman. Mercifully, in the brief time available to us this evening, we will not explore this teaching, okay? Now, the Upanishad corpus includes texts mainly in the chronological range from 800 to 300 BCE, so it is much later than the Vedic materials. But these texts had lives, either partially or in whole, for centuries before they got into anything remotely approaching a stable form. If you like stories, Hinduism is the religion for you. We have got epics. The Mahabharata, emphasis on the third syllable, Mahabharata. It's a huge text. It's 100,000 verses. It's 7 times longer than the Iliad and the Odyssey combined. Ouch. The modern critical edition weighs in at just under 6,000 pages in 11 volumes. It is quite the rat whacker. This is the 400-page summary. Okay, you know you are in for a ride when the Dummy's Guide, the Cole's Notes, 400 pages just to trace the spine of the story through this massive text. Okay? And to quote the editor of this volume, the Mahabharata succeeds brilliantly in illustrating how seemingly grand and magnificent human endeavors turn out to be astonishingly insignificant from the perspective of eternity. So take that for what it's worth. Okay. This text is very large. It's multi-layered. Dates of composition and compilation are all over the place. Mostly it was by 1430, by 1500 BCE. It was mostly in some kind of stable, recognizable form. Okay? There is one chapter of the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, we've heard of the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, this is a standalone text. You're not going to get a class to read 400-page summary, but you can get them to read, 700 verses. You can get them to read 100-some pages. This text, the Bhagavad Gita, circulated in oral form or forms for centuries before reaching some kind of stable written form and the date ranges are all over the place. Okay. A suitable name for this is probably the Song of the Lord. That is the Bhagavad Gita. The authorship of these epics is unknown. It seems to be, with something this large and multi-layered, seems to be a mix of divine revelation and human in, thank you, in one version, Brahman dictated the text to Ganesh, who's the elephant-headed god. Something happened and a deity got killed, and the only spare head they had was the elephant, so it got put on this deity. It's the central story about a battle between good and evil. Okay, so you've got a massive theme to work with in this story. Okay. So we've got some of the Bhagavad Gita, and the last one I will mention is the Ramayana. You've heard of Rama, yes? Ramayana epic. This is the exploits, the adventures of Rama. There he is, okay? Along with his wife Sita. These are model spouses for Hindu marriage. Don't worry that they're human and animal. Get used to that. The stories in this epic are also about 1500 BCE. Rama is a manifestation or an incarnation of the deity Vishnu. And this is important. This what seems like just a story, okay, has sacred import for Hindus. The concluding verses in the last chapter of the Ramayana quote, "Whoever reads and recites the holy, life-giving Ramayana is associated with and glorifies Rama and is therefore freed from sin and attains heaven." Just by reading a story, yeah? Okay, there are many, many more categories of Hindu sacred texts, but these will do for our purposes tonight, okay? So let's talk about some of the major ideas in Hinduism because they're going to come up a little bit in my talk. Karma. Everybody knows karma. It's how you find a good parking space at the mall, right? Okay. Okay. No. It's much more serious than that. Think of karma as double entry bookkeeping for your soul. Because that's what it is. What you put in, you get out, right? Hinduism, one of its founding ideas was also the caste system. And here it diverges from Buddhism. Buddha was appalled by the caste system, took over many ideas of Hinduism, but Buddhism does not have the caste system. So there are four main castes. Since the priests are the ones who constructed this caste system, they put themselves on the top. Like, duh, okay. Then the Kshatriyas, the warrior class. Then the professional, the business class, the Vaishyas. The Shudras are the peasants or the manual laborers. And then the people for whom there is no place in the system. They are the out of caste. That's where we get our word, outcast. People who are simply not included in whatever the group is, whatever the structure is, the people who, for whatever reason, cannot be included, okay? Dharma is also very important in Hinduism. It's the cosmic order or righteousness, okay? It's the thing that governs both the universe and us in the universe, okay? And then there is this very complicated idea of reincarnation. This almost endless cycle, both individually and universally, of death, rebirth, until that sliver of us that is immortal learns what it needs to so that we can merit what is called moksha, which is a type of salvation. It's a release from the cycle of birth and death and then rebirth, okay? So we're trying to get off this treadmill, okay, by learning what we need to do with our souls. Okay? Hinduism, is it monotheistic? Is it dualist? Is it Trinitarian? Is it polytheistic? What is it? The answer is yes. All of the above. It gives you a lot to work with when you're studying this religion. It really does. Okay? So, if Hinduism is monotheistic, okay, then the single deity is Brahman. The single deity is Brahman. That's the impersonal, the absolute, the all-pervading ground of reality, the origin and support of our contingent beings in our currently perceptible multiverse. Brahman keeps the world in existence. If we look through the prismatic lens of Trinitarianism, Hinduism can show up as a Trinitarian religion. The Trinity is Brahman. Over on the side, you see the multiple faces. Brahman is the Lord of the three worlds, past, present, and future. Brahman is the creator deity. Brahman is both the universe and the creator of the universe, and the Lord of past, present, and future, the Lord of time. Vishnu there in the middle is the preserver of the universe that Brahman has created. Vishnu, Brahman doesn't incarnate. Vishnu incarnates as a number of avatars or entities. In the Ramayana, Vishnu is Rama. Vishnu can also incarnate as Krishna. You've heard of Krishna, right? Okay, we're going to hit on him in just a minute. These are the two most important, Rama and Krishna. There are 7 other major avatars. And these avatars bridge the gap between the utterly transcendent Brahman and the world. Anybody thinking of the opening to John's Gospel? Where the world dwells among us, okay? All right. The third party is Shiva with the trident there. Shiva is both the destroyer and the regenerator. Because remember, time is cyclical, so destroyer doesn't have the negative connotation that it might if we were thinking of time as strictly linear. Okay? So Shiva is the destroyer and the regenerator according to the Hindu cyclical understanding of time as we work through successive incarnations until we reach moksha. If we look through a polytheistic prism, then the various avatars or incarnations of the major deities are considered as separate entities. So you can see Ganesh, you see the elephant? See the elephant deity there? He's considered as a separate deity rather than just a manifestation of one of the 3 major deities. So the avatars or the incarnations are considered deities in their own right. They're separate entities. And different groups of devotees worship different deities, okay? So this is a very tactile form of Hinduism, very popular devotional form of Hinduism, to think of Hinduism as polytheistic and somewhat similar to how people have particular saints that they might be having a special relationship with, okay? You can have devotional practices to one or more deity that makes sense to you, okay? Abstract language robs us of our emotions, and so we need something a little more concrete. So we need some avatar or some incarnation in order to have something upon which to focus our devotional energies. Okay? I think that's going to have to be enough of Hinduism to get us through tonight. All right? So section 2, if you're counting. Religion is not ethics. Okay, previously I mentioned the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita and Dr. Oppenheimer. You knew I had to get him in here someplace, okay? Dr. Oppenheimer studied, before he was a doctor, before he was a professor, he studied Sanskrit at Berkeley so he could read this in the original Sanskrit. Okay, that's an enormous use of resources. So he wasn't a dilettante. This text mattered greatly to him throughout his entire adult life, from college student until he died. Okay? Sanskrit is not an easy language. It has a complicated grammar and phonology, and he mastered it so he could read this text. And I think we've all seen the movie Oppenheimer. And you remember the sex scene? Well, if you don't, there's no reason for me to describe it because it won't help. Okay? After the sex scene where they sit around naked and smoke, and what they talk about is the Bhagavad Gita. And I don't know why, but that's how it's in the movie, okay? This is the text that the girlfriend picked off the shelf and asked him to read to her after they, okay? So Oppenheimer wrote to his brother Frank that he was studying the Bhagavad Gita. And he said, quote, "It is very easy and quite marvelous." He lied. It is not easy. "It is very easy and quite marvelous. The Lord's song is the most beautiful philosophical song existing in any known tongue." That is page 99 of American Prometheus. Okay? This is a book worth reading. Even if you've read the movie, it's a book worth reading. Parts of it anyway. It gets tedious about whether he was or wasn't a communist, but the parts where he talks about the development of his mindset is quite interesting in the book, and it wasn't covered much in depth in the movie, I didn't think. Anyway, he calls the Bhagavad Gita the most beautiful philosophical song existing in any known language. And note his use of the term philosophical. I mention this point because I want to demonstrate that a text can be profoundly ethical, but it can be read absent any religious connection, okay? People tend to confuse and conflate ethical and religious when in fact they are distinct categories. Ethics: required, supported or encouraged, neutral, discouraged, forbidden. Okay? Ethics deals with categories of actions and the consequences of them. I understand all religions contain concepts of ethical import, but not all ethical systems are automatically religious in content, and this is one of them. Okay? In the Bhagavad Gita, Prince Arjuna and his war chariot driver, who is actually the deity Vishnu incarnated as Krishna, and you can tell that because Krishna incarnates in blue in manuscripts, okay? So when you see the blue deity, you know it's Krishna, and Arjuna is the guy in the back. Okay, so the deity Krishna has come to be Arjuna's war chariot driver at the beginning of this massive battle that forms the central narrative of the Mahabharata, of which the Gita is just one chapter. This battle is a metaphor for the cosmic battle between good and evil, and Prince Arjuna looks out across the battlefield and he sees his cousins and his favorite teacher on the opposing side of the battlefield, and he tells Krishna, I do not want to fight. I do not want to fight and kill people who are my friends. I think many of us Westerners would kind of applaud that demonstration of individual conscience, yes? Well, Krishna teaches the opposite. Krishna states that because Arjuna was born as a kshatriya, born as a warrior, that's the second highest class, Arjuna must follow the dictates of his caste responsibilities. Arjuna was born a warrior, therefore he must fight. So that's one point. The second teaching is that Krishna instructs Arjuna how to dissolve his own ego, how to gain detachment from the outcomes and consequences of his actions that his caste or his job require of him. How to gain detachment from the outcomes that your job requires of you. Keep that in mind, right? And this teaching is repeated over and over and over. Dissolve one's ego, let go of attachments to outcomes. So in the years after World War II, Dr. Oppenheimer repeatedly stated that his job as a scientist on the Manhattan Project was to do science, which he did brilliantly. It was up to politicians and others how to use or misuse the results of that science. Repeatedly, and this is the transcript of the decision revoking his security clearance in the matter of J. Robert Oppenheimer, repeatedly in, I don't know whether you call it a trial or the hearings, in his testimony before the members investigating whether his security clearance should be revoked, Dr. Oppenheimer stressed that he did his job as a scientist. His thinking on and his justification for his role in the development of atomic weapons is problematic, especially in a non-caste society. Right? He did lobby for restrictions on atomic weapons, on the use of atomic weapons after the war, but it was his deeply held belief that as a scientist, he was not responsible for what happened to the consequences of his scientific research. But then you have to ask, who is most knowledgeable about atomic weapons? Who should be the decision makers? And we still face this moral quagmire. We really do need to consider the consequences of nuclear actions, regardless of what Krishna teaches. Okay? All right. Does anybody know whether the History Museum has a copy of this? Nobody knows? Okay. I will ask them. They should have an original if they don't already. So, on to the third section. Faith is not religion. This group identifies itself as this Faith and Science Forum, so it may be helpful to distinguish, or at least how I distinguish, between faith and religion. The concepts are inextricably related, but they're not identical. Faith is a mystery. Okay? Faith is a mystery. It's a fundamental, intuitive, other than fully rational orientation in and to the world. Claims of faith are existential. They are universal. claims in various religious traditions are derived from or are generated by claims of faith. I think the two fundamental claims of faith can be simply stated. Stated, not understood, but stated. There is a transcendent other. Whether it's someone or something, I have no idea, but a transcendent other exists rather than nothing. And if we are fortunate and mindful, we can glimpse occasional fleeting recognitions of this transcendence. Intuitive understanding of faith can be very isotopic, okay? The second mystery of faith is that the world is contingent, but it's also ordered and purposeful. And this claim rests on, I think, the inherent improbability that the whole of existence is simply fortuitous. That may be true, but I don't want to think that, because I don't know how to function if that were true, okay? Claims of faith are numinous. They are not empirical. They are not logical. They are not solved by equations or syllogisms. No amount of logical analysis or human reason can prove that claims that lie at the heart of faith. It's a mystery, okay? An example. Here are the three mysteries of faith, right? Credo in unum Deum, Patrem omnipotentem, Factorum Caeli et terrae, visibilium omnium et invisibilium. If you're old enough, you remember that. Credo in unum Deum, one and only one God. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Achad. God is one. Credo in unum Deum. In Islam, La ilaha illa Allah. There is no God but God. There is no Allah but Allah, and Allah alone shalt thou worship. Okay? It's the same mystery of faith. One and one only deity, on the oneness and the uniqueness of this transcendent other. One mystery of faith generates three distinct religious traditions. Okay? But we are all products of 19th century science. It's just the air we breathe, okay? And 19th century common era science, it tends to deny the existence of anything that it cannot measure or explain. Empiricism run wild. Things that could not be explained, of course, they continue to exist, but because we can't see them, we can't recognize them, we cannot explain them. So mysteries of faith have been left out as part of the descriptors of the world. Okay? But this group is a faith and science group. So what is it that we're about? Faith and science. I'm getting there. Faith and science. I think we are about this. This is a Brahman Sutra, it's a Upanishad text. That from which truly all beings are born, by which when born they live, and into which they shall all return, that seek to understand. So if we can understand that mystery, we can understand the rest. So, how are we to investigate and understand this mystery that lies at the origin of faith? So, based on my years of study, my participation in various religious traditions, my life experience in that long period between dorm life and assisted living, right? Most of it has been taken up with questions about religion. Okay? I think the way to enter into the mystery of faith and its connections with into science is through the recognition of the cosmotheandric mystery that surrounds and sustains us all. Now, this cosmotheandric mystery, this is a concept by Raimondo Panikkar. Interesting guy. Right? He was both a mystic and a chemist. He had an Indian Hindu father, a Spanish Catholic mother who was a priest and a chemist. I think he would feel a little at home in our group. I think he would find this a congenial place. Okay? There are three aspects of this one inseparable mystery of faith. The cosmos, which is the material world. This is where science would come in. Theos, the divine energetic presence that animates and sustains everything. And us, human consciousness. Okay? So none of these three dimensions can exist or be understood in isolation from the other two, but none of the Western models for the relationship between faith and science or religion and science adequately capture them. I think they're all based on a false dichotomy. Faith and science are irreducibly interdependent. They are not merely interconnected. And when I look at some of the talks coming up later this summer, I think we're on the right track in pursuit of these three independent aspects of the cosmotheantic mystery. Nels, next week, is going to give us a talk on the earliest variant of human religious consciousness, animism and shamanism. John, the Buddhist, is going to give us a talk on how and why altruism is both a transcendent impulse and a human response. Joyce is going to give us a talk on our ordered universe. Right? And then we're going to get a guest speaker that is going to enlarge the universe into a multiverse. I have no idea what's going to happen there. In the cosmotheandric mystery, specific religions, the religious traditions, they're essential components, but they're intermediate steps. They're not the final goal. Religious belief systems are human responses to the cosmotheandric mystery. All religious belief systems make existential claims, and they should not. And they differ. So how can they all make ultimate claims, and they can be different, and they can contradict, okay? No one set, no one religious belief system, no one set of religious symbols, no one group of doctrinal formulas can exhaust the full content of the cosmotheandric mystery. All the revelations that form the basis of religious belief systems, all the symbols, the cross, the Trinity, the theophany at Sinai, the Hajj to Mecca, all the rituals, all the texts that are held sacred, they're all historically and culturally specific because they have been given to people who live inside specific cultural and historical frameworks, okay? So we need to remember just how provisional our understanding is in both religion and science, okay? So now we got to get to some science, right? About time. I want to present some examples from various fields of science, religion and science. These examples are taken from, thank you, taken from sacred Hindu texts, okay? The first one is Indra's net, okay? Hinduism does not make a separation between the natural and the supernatural, between the physical and the metaphysical. Indra's net spreads across the universe, and it represents the interpenetration of all existences, and each jewel in the link reflects every other jewel in the entire net, okay? Indra's net. Indra was one of the early deities. The Bhagavad Gita tells us that both matter and spirit are beginningless, and that when Vishnu incarnated as Krishna, when Vishnu alighted on earth, he supported all beings with divine energy. There is no separation between the physical and the spiritual. Krishna asks for some proof or Arjuna asks for some proof that Krishna is actually Krishna. And he's shown Krishna in the full transcendent form, the fixed supreme object of knowledge, the ultimate resting place, eternal protector of the Dharma, primordial spirit, burning the universe with your splendor, with your divine energy. And it's at this point that Arjuna throws himself on his face and he begs for the vision to go away. All right? So be careful what you pray for. You just may get that revelation. And it threatened to destroy him. Okay? Agriculture, that's a science, right? I don't know if we have any farmers, but agriculture is a science. It forms the foundation of any civilization. We were talking about Gobekli Tepe at dinner table, okay? And the foundation text for agriculture in Hinduism is the Arthashastra, 4th century. Agricultural prosperity depends on a stable environment for farmers to be able to plow and sow and harvest. So it is incumbent upon the ruler to follow Dharma, to follow righteous conduct, to ensure the social and economic stability that makes farming possible, right? So important is this text that it is carved in stone, so that we can remember. This is a portion of it carved in a large, looked like to me, polished granite stone. Okay? Do I have any astronomers? No? Okay. Well, too bad. As early as the Rig Veda, I don't know where Galileo was, but as early as the Rig Veda, we have the heliocentric model of the universe. So here we are in the Rig Veda, very, very early. The sun moves in its orbit, which itself is moving. The earth and other bodies move around the sun due to the force of attraction because the sun is heavier than them. This Rig Veda following also articulates the principle of gravitational attraction. The sun moves in its orbit, but holding earth and other heavenly bodies in a manner that they do not collide with each other, okay, through force of attraction. And I think you can see in the center, that yellow thing there, that's the sun, and those are the planets around the sun. That's the heliocentric model. Galileo should have studied Sanskrit. Okay? All right. Baking. This is a shout out for Selma and the Susans. Selma does our baking, the Susans do the food. Okay? Baking. Food is such an important part of rituals, yes? So, again, the Rig Veda, very early text, barley flour flat cakes baked on coals and then dipped in honey and then offered to Agni, who's the goddess of fire. Auspiciously radiant and divine Agni, grant wealth to worshipers who present to you cakes dressed with honey butter. Okay? I know, Jody, it works, right? Be nice to me, I'm giving you stuff, right? Unlike Christianity, Hinduism has no problem with the theory of biological evolution. Recall that Vishnu incarnates as Krishna in the Trinitarian model for Hinduism. What you're looking at is a fish spitting up Krishna, okay? In case you didn't know that. Vishnu's function is preserver. He incarnates as Krishna through a series of incarnations, and listen to the order, through a series of incarnations across a number of texts. Krishna manifests first as an aquatic organism, then as an amphibian, then as a land animal, then as a combination human and animal avatar or person, and finally as a fully developed human, okay? This incarnational sequence is almost identical to the sequence proposed in theories of biological evolution, is it not? Okay, so Hinduism has no problem with biological evolution. Alrighty, this next shout out. I know he looks like Rasputin, but it's not. It's Dmitry Mendeleev. All right, this is for Joyce and Kirk, because Kirk is a computer. You're a chemical engineer, aren't you? Okay, so chemistry. Would you be surprised if I told you there's a Sanskrit connection to the periodic table of elements? I was surprised as well to come across this one, okay? In the organization and construction of Mendeleev's periodic table of elements, he was at the Imperial Academy in St. Petersburg with a colleague who was working for Reasons Passing Understanding in this enormous Sanskrit German dictionary. I know, you gotta get a chair of something in the university, okay? You gotta specialize in something. So anyway, this massive Sanskrit, and it's right there, okay? It's this massive Sanskrit grammar, and it's organized into columns and rows. And he is talking with his colleague at the Imperial Academy, and it occurs to Mendeleev to organize the periodic table into columns and rows, yeah? And in his original, his periodic table, before it was filled out, the blank spaces were given Sanskrit abbreviations of ek and divi and tri to hold the places for the yet undiscovered elements. Did you know that? Say if you'd studied Sanskrit instead of chemistry, you'd know all this, right? Yeah, and I look at, it seems like the more important the idea, the more illegible the handwriting, right? So, but anyway, okay. I don't know if we have any geneticists, but that's the next one. I don't know if you can read this, but look at the one in bold, in vitro fertilization, okay? This is from the Indian Journal of Endocrinology and Metabolism, and they looked at the Mahabharata for instances and descriptions of reproductive endocrinology. I don't know. So let's take one example of assisted reproduction using in vitro fertilization, and it refers to Gandhara. She's a female, major female character in the Mahabharata, and she divides her fetus into 100 pieces, and then she puts them in jars. There she is, putting them in jars, little pickle jars, and incubates them. And 100 sons and 1 daughter were born one by one. And this narrative is it strongly resembles the process of in vitro fertilization with the multiple pregnancies that commonly occur with it. And the description also mirrors an outside the uterus, an extrauterine gestation, which scientists are pursuing. Okay? So there will be no problem in India with various types of reproductive technologies. Okay? We got any hydrologists? No? Okay. I put this in for Gary, who I don't think is here tonight, because he's always asking, well, how do we know what's lost? Well, Gary, if it's lost, we don't know it, but think about it, okay? But what do we have? How much has survived and how much has been lost? And it turns out what's been lost is enormous, okay? But we live in the desert Southwest, and water is always a concern. This example on the left, this is from the Brihat Samhita. It's a 6th century Common Era copy of a 4th century BCE text, and it deals with hydrology and underwater water veins, underground aquifers such as that, planet's hydrological cycle. I put this on here because you see that little hole drilled in each of them? These are palm tree leaves. Can you imagine a more fragile medium in a monsoon climate on which to preserve something than this? Okay? So we are extremely fortunate that this survives, but this text teaches us not only about hydrology and groundwater utilization, but it also contains a chapter on seismology, which is on the right-hand side. That's India, which is a very active earthquake area, and even in the 4th century BCE, they were studying earthquakes. I mean, they live at the foothills of the Himalayas, right? So they needed to know about earthquakes and how much of northern India, at least, is an active earthquake fault. Do we have any mathematicians? Nobody will admit it. So our mathematical set is orthogonal, right? That means 0, no members. Ah, you think I didn't know that word, don't you? Okay. Well, what are you looking at here? Right triangle? Pythagorean theorem, right? Wrong. This is centuries before Pythagoras. This is the Pythagorean theorem in Sanskrit, centuries before Pythagoras. This is from the Salva Sutras. They're late Vedic, centuries before Pythagoras. They're used in the rituals they're a type of sacred geometry because we need them in order to know where and how to orient our temples and our fire altars in early Hinduism, okay? And I just thought it was interesting to see the Pythagorean theorem outside a context where we normally see it, yeah? Okay? Okay. This one's for Nels. You gave us a talk several years ago in which you claimed that Ezekiel saw a spaceship. You think I don't remember? Well, you're right. What he saw was a vimanas. It's a type of celestial chariot or flying palace. And the senior deities in the Hindu epics all had them. They had their rides, okay? And this, I don't know what Ezekiel saw, but these things, okay? Now, details about the propulsion system are unclear, but there are several mentions that this chariot, which sometimes looks like a flying palace, sometimes more like a chariot, it can either be powered by means of chanting hymns and mantras, or it could be controlled by the mental telepathy of the deity whose chariot it was, okay? Now, naturally, you gotta have a sweet ride, so this is Rama's chariot on the right. Seats of emerald. It's obviously made out of gold. It's a throne. It's seats of emeralds and pearls. It can expand and contract according to the number of people you need to fit into it, kind of like third world buses where they expand when they shove more and more people into them. Pearls were gems hung with bells so that as it floated through the air, it created its own kind of melody. It's an aerial car that went everywhere at one's will and resembled a mountain. Okay? You think that's what Ezekiel saw? You pretty sure? Yeah? Okay. All right, last one. Weapons research. Los Alamos is famous for the Manhattan Project that led to the construction of atomic weapons. Or so we are pleased to think. You know that sign that's out there when you come into town, Los Alamos, where discoveries are made? Ha! We're gonna have to change that. Where rediscoveries are made. Turns out the deity Brahman had beat out Los Alamos by thousands of years. The Brahman Shirastra means the weapon of Brahman. It's the nuclear option in the Mahabharata, okay? It's the fiery weapon of last resort. It's described as a, quote, weapon that creates an enormous fireball, fills the sky with fire and smoke. Rivers evaporate and entire armies are instantly slaughtered. It prevents even a single blade of grass from growing in any area where this weapon has been used, thus ensuring the starvation of humans or animals that managed to escape the fiery cataclysm. But this weapon is also capable of annihilating someone's existence in the past, the present, and the future. The Brahmanashirastra annihilates time itself. And recall that the quotation, the remark that came to Dr. Oppenheimer at the completion of the test detonation at the Trinity site was the quotation from the Bhagavad Gita in the Mahabharata, that if the radiance of 1,000 suns were to burst at once into the sky, that would be like the splendor of the Mighty One. I have become death, the destroyer of worlds. Okay? I hope from at least some of these examples that you don't think that I mean to suggest that thousands of years ago the Hindus possessed in potentia modern scientific discoveries. I do mean to suggest that if we could remove the false Western dichotomy between religion and science, between the physical and the metaphysical, I think we would have much more room for fruitful discussions. And I thank you for your time this evening. And I have the slides for the bibliography, the primary, which I've already talked about, and some of the secondary sources. Thank you very much.
Okay, so instead of going into, go ahead.
Questions?
Yeah, go ahead.
No
Questions?
questions. Excellent.
Okay.
How you doing, Bob?
Well, thank you. Vicki, in your introduction to Hinduism, you outlined for us the monotheistic, trinitarian, polytheistic. Are all of those manifestations of Hinduism present in modern India?
Yes?
Okay.
It's very difficult. I mean, what's worthy of our prayers? What's worthy of our worship? Some abstract concept that I don't understand? Or a statue that, like an icon, represents the energy behind the image? I can understand that. Okay? And remember, most people are not reading these texts. They're listening to them. The epics are acted out every year, or they're, the amateur drama societies do portions of the Ramayana, or when they did on Indian national television the Mahabharata, I wouldn't call it a mini-series, it was a maxi-series. The country stopped because it was a shared experience for millions of people to watch this every week on TV. These are very live things for people, but you need to have something specific for people. You can't just worship Brahman, because what's that?
Thank you.
In order to get ready for your talk, I was reading the Rig Veda a little bit, and there's a lot of discussion of something called soma. Apparently they ate or drank a lot of soma, and they really liked the way it made them feel. Do you have any idea? Does
I know
anyone
exactly
have it?
what it was, brother.
Do we know what it was? What was
Yes.
soma?
It's hallucinogens. The Greeks had it. They're getting stoned. Okay? But it's a liquid with hallucinogenic properties, and you drink it. And it helps you remove from the linear, the rational, the narrative, and become more intuitive, or to be able to see more connections. Soma, it's throughout the Greek religions. What do you think the priestesses at the Oracle of Delphi were doing? Right? It's how you put yourself, almost like shamanism. Right? The shamans, they were people for whom the veil between this world and the next world, or between the physical and the metaphysical, was very thin. But they also had aids to help them make the transition across and then come back and talk to us about it. Okay? Soma is one of those vehicles that helps one get out of the monkey mind, if you will, the discursive reasoning, into something else.
Is it a generic term or is it a specific plant?
There are specific plants.
Okay.
I'm not going to give recipes, but there are recipes out there. It's everywhere. It's in South America. It's in the ancient Greeks. It's in animist traditions. It's everywhere. This kind of drink that helps us remove ourselves from the quotidian concerns in order to be open to something else. You could call it LSD. Might be in that same category. Soma is not LSD. It's not. Okay. This is why when the monk Thomas Merton was having some discussions about these kinds of transcendental experiences with Timothy Leary, Merton said, no, you shouldn't use any kind of aid or artificial means to generate those experiences. It should be just contemplative prayer and meditation. So Merton wouldn't do it, but many, many other traditions do use aids, and Soma is a very common one. Carlos Castaneda, you've heard of those books? Okay, he's into Soma as well.
So the weapon that was shown at the
We
end...
never used it at St. John's.
Oh, okay. So the weapon that was shown at the end, was that AI created?
Probably.
Okay. No, I just was wondering if they envisioned such a weapon with that type of shape. But anyway.
I couldn't find a manuscript illustration of it. I found various other printed images of it, but I wanted one that captured, I wanted an image that seemed to mirror the description in the text about the fireball.
Great.
So I thought that was something we could identify with.
Where did they get the sun-centered planetary behavior that they did? The Copernican vision.
Where did they get the heliocentric model?
Yeah.
They looked. They
And
took
they just-
measurements.
they
They've
just
got
took it, figured
tables
out where
going
everything
back.
went.
They didn't have a theological framework into which they had to fit facts. They were able to look at some more evidence. What did they see? And it's hard because when you stand on the earth, Jody, I can't see whether it's geocentric or heliocentric.
Yeah.
But they had star charts way, way back. Okay? The Hindu mathematics has a long, long tradition. So I think their particular model of heliocentricity is sui generis. I don't think it came from anywhere. But it might have come, from the Chinese. Look how close they are.
Yeah.
But that's not.
Okay.
I just want to make a comment that some of the Vedic texts go back 4,000 years
Yep.
in existence. So, some of the Vedic texts went back 4,000 years.
Yes.
And so, I think what we see in the Vedic texts is really the scientific and mathematical mind freed from, free to explore the world, to try to make sense of the world without a religious
There's no
container
religious
around it.
framework into which you have to fit things.
Right.
And so 4,000 years ago, so that's at least 2,000 years further back than we have Western writing of these things. I don't know how far back the Chinese go because that's not part of what I've studied, but the Eastern world has records much longer than we go back. But we don't look at them. Anybody else? No? All right. Well, you have a question.
That's right, I was coming for the microphone. Okay, so anyway, as I understand it, Zoroastrianism was formed in the Hindu area, Hinduism. So this is a real stretch. So I see from your expression,
No, it's just anything okay. You want to talk about the Aryan invasion?
And then
because it's a big problem in India today. You look at the earliest level of Hinduism, Agni, and the fire worship and the fire altars. Does that stuff originate in the Indus River Valley, or did it come from the Aryan invaders from Iran into northern India?
Okay.
Well, pick one.
Right.
You'd be wrong, but no.
Yeah,
So
you don't
and then
know.
that's where modern political mythologies get involved in things. But
Yeah.
at the earliest level of animism, there was certainly fire worship. There are early Hindu rituals that to me look exactly like what I know from the Zoroastrian texts.
So the reason why I'm going there is the story about the wise men coming and seeing Jesus when he was born. A lot of the theology that the Zoroastrian religion had seems to have been transferred to Christianity later on, and some of Jesus' teachings. And so I was wondering if there might be a tie from Hinduism, believe in maybe Brahma, a single eye power, through Zoroastrianism to Christianity. But anyway, such a stretch, I know.
The three wise guys were Chaldeans. They came from Iraq. I don't know how far back we can get something that we might recognize in later historical period as the Silk Road. But people were back and forth. There wasn't one guy starting in Beijing and walking all the way to Venice, but there were, and people were on that trade route for all kinds of reasons. So we get 7th century bilingual Chinese Syriac inscriptions. Muhammad on the Silk Road, he was a import-export guy. He met monks, Syriac monks who were on the Silk Road, and they talked about things, and ideas spread, and you hope that the people understood them, but as things move from one culture and one period to another, ideas get a little fuzzy sometimes.
Okay.
I don't know. There's not one thing I could trace from Zoroastrianism into Christianity.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
One.
Any other questions? Oh, okay. One more.
Just another comment. I mean, I think, Vicky mentioned that people were traveling back and forth, and even whole groups of people migrated. So, in more recent times, had the whole gypsies came out of India and brought with them dance and music that, spread across their travel patterns into the Middle East. So I think this idea that, distance, geography was separating early humans is, I think is a mistake. I think there was a lot of travel and a lot of cross-fertilization that would happened.
Yeah, great. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you for your attention and being here this evening. Next week we'll hear from Dells, same time, same place. So we look forward to seeing you all then. All right. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Oh yeah. Thank the speaker again.